about
You
that.
will Q, and we will A, as hard as we can.
Oh my goodness. Okay, sorry. I'm gonna have to take a picture after this. You look great. Sorry.
No worries. That was the first cue.
Yeah, I know. Y'all thought you guys were asking the cues.
Yeah, the reverse Q&As are always fun. To ask you guys whatever you want.
Yeah. So, what do you guys want to know?
Should we first introduce
Oh, I guess we should introduce ourselves. Go ahead.
Who are you?
Hi, I'm Jade Saxton. I'm a voice actor and ADR director for Funimation.
Let me add on. What is a role that you're very proud of that a lot of people don't know about?
A role that I'm very pride is weird. A role that I dig that I think is an underdog show is from a show called Shangri-La. I played a character named Karen, and I also have a split personality and voice the teddy bear that she constantly talks to. Like, so she's talking to herself back and forth. The teddy bear's name is Pudding.
Was it a saucy teddy bear?
A little, yeah. A little saucy.
Hi guys, I'm Blake Shepard. I'm a voice actor and also an animator. My favorite role that I've done that I feel like a lot of people don't know, maybe Natsune from Inu X Boku. The guy with the rabbit ears. I just liked him because he would poke people and go bing bong.
Hi everyone, I'm Jeannie Tirado, a voice actor as well. And if you have not heard or seen of an anime called Orange, I always highly recommend it. It is heavy emotional content, so just as a disclaimer, it's not like a happy-go-lucky a lot. But I voice a character named Takako, and I love that role not just because like of how I voiced it. It was the dynamic of the main cast. We all knew how important the show was, and all of us we really put our hearts into it.
And my name's Tony Oliver. I'm a voice actor and a ADR director and adapter. Been doing it for a long time. I'm the role that I'm proud of nobody knows about was a show called Brigadoon. And there was a robot in there called Melon Blue. And he was really hard to play, made it really fun, and nobody ever saw it.
Speaking of Brigadoon, that's like one of my go-to audition songs. It's like being in love. Brigadoon.
So I guess we can open it up.
Yeah.
If you guys have any questions for it. It doesn't just have to be about voice acting. It can be absolutely anything. Yes.
I noticed that you worked on Power Rangers
Yes.
when it first developed. I don't know, maybe you've heard this before, but was the character Tommy Oliver a pun on your name?
Yes,
Okay.
actually it was. It was a joke on me. They had to name the characters. It was well into the season. We had an episode where we had to give the characters last names, and so all the writers submitted. And I don't know what the original name was, but when I read it, it was not Tommy Oliver. At that point, I was no longer attending the shoots. I was mostly working in the office and doing post-production, dealing with all the stuff, the sound afterwards. So I didn't notice when they changed it, and I didn't know they changed it until I saw the dailies came through, and I went, "What the hell?" So I used this as a way to kind of punk the production executive who made that decision, because what she didn't know is I never knew my grandmother, my maternal grandmother. She only met me twice, and she never got my name right. She always called me Tommy. And yeah, I didn't like her. She was not a nice lady. But so I went into Ellen's office and I went, "Thanks, Ellen." She says, "What?" She says, "You changed the name to Tommy." I said, "Yeah." She says, "That's fine." And I told her the story, and she felt so bad I had to let her off the hook. So yeah, it was a pump on my name.
Well, there you go.
So more questions? Yes.
What is kind of the dynamic and difference for you guys between when you play a really comedic role versus a really serious and emotional role? What kind of is the distinction between those for you guys personally?
How close I am to the microphone. No?
I don't know, when you're doing comedy, you tend to be more, I like to use a lot more music in the voice and get a little bit more, and when you're doing drama, I keep it a little bit more close to the chest, a little flatter. I'm not good at comedy, so to me it's just kind of jump out and hope the writing works, because I don't really, and I can time a joke, but I'm not If there are people that are funny and they're not, I'm not one of the people that are really funny. So, but theater, drama, with my theater background, I love that because I spend most of my time just looking inside and seeing what I can find.
Yeah, I definitely say the more dramatic ones are more naturalistic in the voice.
Yeah.
You're not doing as much of what he was talking about, like the musicality and like wacky and like kind of unrealistic reads. Like you wouldn't really get to say that to someone like that in real life. It's just kind of more of a naturalistic sort of feel.
Yeah.
And I'd say for, I heard one of my acting coaches say it, that one of the things that makes in situations so funny is when the person who's in the person who's being comedic, they really believe everything that they're saying. Like if it's something so outlandish, but it's like, no, this is like, I'm dead serious about it. When I was doing Seti Numa, like she is so crazy comedic out there, but that like, no. Boys love is the most important thing in the world. Like my brother still, he wants to make a shirt of this line that she says, she just goes, I'm an otaku. And she's so serious about it. I think with drama roles, you're more in tune to how other people are like, how is what I'm saying can affect somebody else. So it's a lot of reaction to other people, whereas comedy, it's a lot more selfish in the reads, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I heard a similar thing that the comedy it's the clown playing violin terribly, thinking it's the most beautiful music in the world.
Yep.
Right? And so it's that's the clown. Like a normal person with drama would just play the violin as beautifully as they can, and the clown just believes whatever they're playing is beautiful, even if it's like it's like. So that's a more eloquent way to put it. That's why I'm not an acting teacher. Make it funny.
That was a good question. There's a lot of different, you take on things. You have to kind of change your mindset when you see the content of the show, and then also the way your character is like, okay, flip brains.
Well, and when you're dealing with anime, you're also dealing with the fact that humor is always local. So you're trying to figure out a joke that really doesn't speak to you culturally, and learn how to deliver it in a way that makes you laugh. So that's the difficulty. I find comedy really difficult.
Yeah, especially, gosh, for script writers, for script adaptation, because there are a lot of things where Japanese, they like to do a lot of like play on words kind of jokes. That's not going to translate.
I love when I have one. It's like, yes, but the blue bird was in the tree. Yeah. What the heck was that mean? And apparently, it was a bad translation of a punchline of a famous joke. It's kind of like that.
Yeah. One of the ways I've entertained myself in the past, especially when I first started doing voice work, and I would get like the boy that takes the lead girl on the date that you never see again in another episode. Because usually it's like some bad dudes show up and like he tries to defend her and then he gets hurt. And so, I would always do like the, hey, leave her alone, and then they'd hit me and I'd go, ah! So that always made me laugh. It's like just the sissiest, like, anything.
Next. Somebody else have a question? Yes.
Did you start voice acting, or were you into theater before that?
I started in theater. I did mostly musicals, so I was a singer mostly. In fact, I got my union card as a singer, not as an actor. But yeah, that's what I did. The problem is I lived in Los Angeles, which means you make no money doing musicals, and I didn't want to move to New York and I had kids.
Tony
Did any of
Oliver
us start off
is an
doing
amazing singer's name.
Thank you. Although they called me Tone for years. When I got my union card with AFTRA I sang on a Broadway concept album. That's how I got it. And the contractor filled out my union paperwork as Tone Oliver. At the time, it was Tony Tone was out, and Tone Low, all those guys. So he just assumed, and it took me until the unions merged before I could get them to finally change it. Yeah.
Did any of us get our start just in voice acting, or did we start?
Not me.
Yeah, none of us started just in voice acting. My degree is in voice, so I went from the music background as well.
And I didn't do theater in college. I was already acting professionally by college. I was doing. I went to a performing arts high school where I was in theater and theater design, and then I double majored in visual art. So I was kind of just always doing that.
Yeah, and if we go way back, like choir and singing for sure was like my first sort of like performance type thing that I did, and theater and that. And then I think the first foray I had into voice acting was there are these like legitimate like clowns in Dallas that I through networking came upon, and they had a shop and they wrote all of their own material for their marionette shows, and they wanted them all to be voiced, and they started hiring me to play Little Bo Peep or whatever other like young female character they were doing. And so that was my first kind of step into doing anything behind a microphone like that.
Can you still see those? Are they online?
I don't know if they were filmed. They had like an actual legitimate like shop where they would like perform daily or whatever at the Galleria Mall.
I found out that Texas used to have a mime troupe. In like the 70s and the 80s, there was the Texas Mime Troupe.
Well, mimes were so big back then.
Right.
They were
But
the silent majority.
Yeah, they were the
Silent
majority.
Very silent.
But yeah, I found one. I had one of their T-shirts in high school. I wear it all the time because I found it at a resale shop. And I met some guys that were actually in it back in the day. Yeah, it's a big deal. It's like this French mime, I guess, came over and taught a group of actors miming, and so they loved it so much that they just started a whole troupe.
Just goes to show, voice acting is not just, voice acting is acting. If you're doing any kind of acting.
It's really the only place, theater and in some ways film, you know, in some places that teaches that, is really the only way to learn this. It's where you learn all the basic skills required to act on camera, on microphone, on stage. It's all, the internal skill's the same, it's just how much you express it, and how you express it. So, yeah, theater is really the basis of all this.
Yeah, and it's go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I feel like the music side of it, I always get notes that my technicality is really good, so I feel like if you have a music background, it helps with technicality, but as far as the like core of acting.
I do know a couple of voice actors that started as voice actors, and they're both doing quite well.
Yeah.
But both of them, within a year of voice acting, realized they were deficient. And were having a lot of trouble getting beyond the one voice they did really well, and all went back in training. And then were in the acting as they went. Fortunately, they were able to do it on the job because they had one or two characters that they could play without having to get too deep. And now they're some of the best voice actors around, but they eventually had to learn it too. They just learned it afterwards when they realized they didn't have it.
Yeah, I'm sure we've all had those awkward conversations where you have professional actors that you work with a lot, and then they're like, they find out you're a voice actor, and they're like, oh, I tried to do that. I did it once, and they never called me back.
Yeah.
And it's like they're kind of bitter about it, but it's if you just focus on acting, hopefully you can get your chops up enough where you can learn quickly on the job, because there's not a lot of directors. Some directors are really good about it, and they will kind of instruct you if they know you're new, but it's very hard to kind of hone in on those special skills that you need for voice acting very quickly for a lot of people. And so they may be fantastic actors, but just that medium, maybe it was that day, maybe it was that situation, it just didn't work out to where they got a chance to explore that as much.
Well, that special skill is also on top of the already acting. It's not.
Right.
It's not instead of. It's together. So.
Yeah. And whereas it's different with theater, since you're like rehearsing it, you can rehearse a scene and really hone it. What we do with voice acting, all of it's cold read. So you gotta
90 seconds.
bring it. Yeah.
I've heard that unlike theater acting or general acting, like they don't get to give you the script ahead of time to
No.
study, to look
Generally
over.
not. For original American animation, yeah, you'll get it a day or two ahead of time, but it'll change by the time you get inside. So you really can't even memorize everything. It's all going to change on it.
Yeah.
The only time you might recognize it is if you audition for it, and then you get to the scene, you're like, oh, this is the part that I had auditioned for, so you know that. Nothing else.
Sometimes you can get the name of the show out of the person that is calling you to book the time, and then you can do your own research. But
Yeah, generally back then they'll tell you the role. If you got a major role, they'll tell you the show and the role. But not until after you've signed an NDA and promise not to tell anybody.
Yeah.
So, but
Sometimes
they won't.
you have
That's
to
it.
send
They won't give you a
leads
script.
just to audition.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So
I had my wife visit on a project right now for Disney XD I can't talk about, and my wife came by to bring my grandkids by to say goodbye. We're going back to Albuquerque, and they had to sign NDAs to bring my wife. Yeah, just to walk in the room because it happened to be one of those kind of projects. So.
Yes.
how would you go about like getting like acting job, voice acting job, audition and stuff like
What's-
to start off?
You know, start, how do you go about getting a voice acting job?
Like how did you go about it?
Oh, like how did we personally go about it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, like how did we get into it?
Yeah.
I was in theater and it was a networking thing for me because I've been wanting to audition for Funimation for quite some time. And I knew someone who knew a director at Funimation and they were looking for a large female cast and a lot of females to cast, and they recommended me and I was called in. I went from there. Yeah.
And I did an open audition at ADV Films, and I was on a year-long waiting list before I got to go in and actually audition.
It's different for every single person. I was saying last night, like my roommate out of high school lucked out, sent in a demo that she had like recorded in her room to Funimation, and she's been working ever since. For me, I've always had an agent, so I come from a commercial voiceover background. So I was doing, AT&T, wireless, those kind of commercials, and then I happened to get an audition for a video game, and then word of mouth with the studio that I recorded there, they asked, have you worked at Funimation before? So that's how I started doing animation voiceover, but I started from commercial.
And I started as a theater actor as well. I started doing musicals and started at one of the local trades, looking for somebody to do some ADR, which I had no idea what that was. So I lied. And and told them I did. I don't recommend that now. It's too easy to track you down with the internet. But it's, and I happen to have a knack for it. And it just happened to be mostly because of the musicals. Because it's a lot about rhythm. And rhythm and projection. And the two things that you have to do when you're doing musicals, you have to follow the rhythm and you have to project your voice when you sing. So the technical stuff I kind of had down, the rest I just learned as I went. But that ended up on TV, and then that led to me getting called and cast in Robotech, which is what actually started the career.
Also, I love that we're like in a classroom setting and you're totally like Little Witch Academia. So like, yes.
See, I'm thinking about the first scene in Phase Zero. The mages are getting upset with one guy, and it got very nasty. More questions?
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you ever like see the final product afterwards?
Less than you would think. The question is, do I ever see the final product afterwards? Less than you would think. I do because I direct, and so therefore if I want to go to the mixes or anything like that, I'm invited. In fact, they encourage me to go to a mix or two. I generally only get to see 1 or 2 episodes complete before I leave the people who are in charge of doing that, and I move on to the next thing. So it's rare. The only one that I've ever actually sat and watched the whole series after I finished it was Fate Zero, because I liked it so much. And I binge watched over a weekend. And cried.
And I mean, we watch it the same way that you guys do. Like, I have a Funimation Now app, so when it comes out, I'm waiting for the episode to come out, and then I'll watch it. As far as commercial voice, I've never have heard the end product.
Really?
Yeah, I've had friends text me, and they're like, hey, I think I just heard you on the radio.
Yeah.
Did you do a commercial for this and this? And I was like, yeah, I did a couple months ago. How did it sound?
When my kids were growing up, because I was doing a lot of commercials back then, when my kids were growing up, they're going, oh, is that your dad? Yeah, okay. They really didn't care, they just wanted to know, was that me? Okay, that's fine.
Yeah. There was one time I was like on, because I do on camera as well, and I was with family, and gosh, there's another voice actor, Rico Fajardo. I see him on TV all the time. But we were just with family, and then my family's like, Jeannie, is that you on the TV? And I look up and it's a Rent-A-Center commercial. I'm like, yeah. Random.
Yeah, I saw one the other day that was a doctor's commercial, and I saw one of the voice actresses on it, and she was like a doctor, like we here at Memorial Herman. And my friend was like, wait, that's not a real doctor. They don't hire doctors to be in commercials.
Reality TV is a lie.
Yeah, the personalities would not come through at the time. I think it's a little bit different than Bang Zoom. Like the directors at Funimation, like because I direct, we watch it multiple times to review it and to do a mix review once it's been mixed, and then 6 months later to do another mix review for the DVD kind of thing. And so since I do a lot of that, I don't always see like projects that I'm just acting in. I do when I can, but it's like it's a rare little thing. Yeah.
It's not like we don't check in though. I mean, I'll pop onto the, I know something's airing, I'll pop onto Toonami or something and watch a little bit and make sure that I remember it correctly, that we did do a good job,
Speaking of watching, I totally plan, shameless plug, because both of us are here.
Yeah.
Tonight our episode on Pop Team Epic is going to air on Toonami, and I don't have cable normally, but the hotel does. So I'm like, I'm definitely going to watch our episode. Yeah. Anyways.
Is it like 2 a.m.? Or what?
Oh, yeah, I know.
You guys are on right after my show.
Yeah.
Yep.
Stole our slot.
I don't even know what time. I need to actually.
Yeah, that'll be fun. You stabbed me.
Not really. It's a show, guys. It's a show.
I wonder how much long it's going to be getting recast over and over. How long they're going to take it for
Every episode.
Forever.
forever.
Twice every
Pop Team
Pop
Epic.
Team Epic.
Yeah,
It has 48 leads.
They changed
Really?
it.
Yeah.
They changed it.
It's literally the exact same show for 15 minutes, right? And then they do the exact same thing over again, but with a different cast as the two leads. So it's two girls playing the two girls, and then the next time it's two guys voicing the two girls. Yep.
Okay.
It's real weird.
It is a weird show, but then when you see
Really great.
people, it's like one of those shows when you see people like wearing a shirt or a keychain, you're like, no, you're in the know.
Nothing surprising.
What's the weirdest voice you guys ever had to do? Like I know for Tony you did Bean for Hunter x Hunter, right?
Well, that's not a weird voice.
His character's weird.
Yeah. He's a bean in a suit.
When you
Kind of a
sing.
little accountant bean, No, weird for me has been more sounds and stuff. So we're usually the putties with that's the putty patrol. Yeah, 3 guys on mic doing this. And a lot of really character-y kind of role. I like doing those kind of things. So the stranger, the better. They're all kind of weird, but none of them really out there. I don't have that kind of skill. I can't manipulate like people like Frank Walker or those kinds of people.
I've been very blessed. I feel like Funimation, more so than other studios, they have more of the freedom to try out like different accents and different kinds of things. So I've been able to do like a Czech accent, German, French, British. There was one video game that I did where it was a quick mobile game, and for those, because the lines were like so short, they'll have one actor come in to do like 5 or 6 characters. So I'd auditioned for a bunch, and the ones that I booked, like all of them, one was like a Joan Jett impression, the other one was Zoe Saldana, the other one was Gal Gadot, like a bunch of different voices, and it was quick little lines. So it's like, I'd say something like, cherry bomb, and like these random lines, and then I go like, hi, nice to meet you, blah, 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 and then a little like kid, and it was all like in like a matter of like 45 minutes or something. At the end I was just like, I think I called up my brother and I'm like, hey Jonathan, what's going on? And he's like, whoa, what is I don't know my voice right now.
My newest favorite weird voice is, if you guys have watched Monster Hunters, I play, give me a minute. It's Debley. And so he's basically like anime Cartman. He's really fun. He's really fun. He's like, I think that the Japanese just really like he's the fat guy, basically, and like all the jokes are about him being big, and like they call him Tubbly instead of Dubley. It's like, no comment, But he's always like trying to sell him like trinkets and stuff that are worthless, but he's like, no, these are very rare, like you guys should totally buy these. And but he's in the whole show. It's like the Japanese just fell in love with this little character. They bring him along on all the adventures to like poke fat jokes at him. But I liked him. He rides a pig instead of a dragon.
I love that. I always like to do the weird animals that just randomly pop up, like the squirrels and the gerbils. And the other day, one of the directors was like, I'm having a crab contest. And I was like, what? And there was a crab at the end of one of the episodes, and he just kept having multiple people do it to see who would win. And then he popped into my studio and he was like, "You won the crab contest." I was like, "I'm the crab" at the end of that episode. And then one time, one of the weirder ones I've done was from a show called Toriko, where I voiced a pink penguin named Yoon, who only spoke a lot, but only saying their own name. So having to emote everything through only that one word and like really kind of squeaky and crazy. It was also one of the hardest probably on me. So I like all the little animals and critters.
Get you together with Groot.
With Groot.
I actually had a question for you guys. Sorry, I'll ask you a question right after. But I'm curious always when I get to know people, because I know there are ways that you can see kind of the process of dubbing, but a lot of people don't know. Do you guys know kind of how the process is, or did you have any questions? Because I know they were mentioning like how they'll do reviews, and there's several different kinds of reviews. Do you guys know about all that stuff, or is it kind of do you guys want to talk about the process, especially like directing? I feel like it's people that are like side. I only know I go in the booth and you tell me what to say, and I say.
Yeah, pretty much what we do.
Yeah. Hey, you say this.
Actually, we don't tell you what to say or how to say. I like to tell actors how to feel. What's that character feel right now? How do I feel about them? How do I feel about myself? That's usually the direction. That sometimes I have to give a reading or no, I want you to come up on this line, because there's an awful lot of people that when they start thinking, they stop speaking normal, and suddenly it starts sounding red, and everything goes up speak, and everything's kind of straight. So I tend to do that more than anything. And
yeah, I have one director who gave me great advice one time. He's like, "Can you do it one more time, but this time with what's talent?"
There was a director in LA. I won't say his name, Stu Rosen. And I walked in. I was working at Saban, this was back in the '90s, and I walked in to drop something off because I had the studio next. And Stu was in there recording something. It was something Smurfish, one of those kind of cartoons. And I walked in just as he went, "Okay, that was the high school version. Can I have the professional version now?" And he was not joking. He was angry, and he kept berating the actor until the actor finally broke down and cried.
Whoa!
Yeah, and I witnessed this. And so I heard and I asked around, and he was famous for this, and it was just one. He had a cartoon that he did that I think it might have been that one that finally failed miserably, and the entire industry delighted in firing him. And he's no, I can't hear him anymore. I don't know where he went. But there's a couple of directors out there that actually, this is how he thought that he motivated people by calling them horrible names and telling them they had no talent, and this is somehow going to get them. But he won an Emmy at some point, so they kept hiring him.
And I'm sure you guys have felt like with teachers, I feel like there are two different kinds of teachers/directors, people that believe in positive reinforcement and then people that believe in negative reinforcement as being stronger. I've had directors with music more so than with the dubbing, where they believe if I shame you enough, you'll be embarrassed enough that like, no, let me prove you wrong. And some people do flourish under those, but some people like, you need the positive reinforcement of, no, you can do this. So let me.
I describe it as you flourish. I think there are people that can do it and pull it off, but they're damaging themselves in the process.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're flourishing, even if you, yes. I don't like those kind of directors either. They drive me a little crazy because that means it's about them.
Yeah.
It's not about the show. It's not about the audience. It's not about the character. It becomes about them instead of about you or the product, which is where it should be.
But then it sucks because sometimes you'll still pull off the product, so they'll get rehired.
The problem in Hollywood, we're ranting now. The biggest problem in Hollywood is that they keep asking the impossible from us, and then somehow we keep pulling it off. And so they ask for something even more impossible, and then get upset with you and fire you when you can't pull it off, even though what you did before should have been possible.
Yeah, and then they're like, do it this time but with one hand tied behind your back, because we don't want this whole thing in there that worked the first time.
Yeah.
So we can do the next one. Well, you saw it with the Avengers movies. Like the first Avengers movie was so amazing, and then they're like, do the same thing but better with more characters. And it was like, oh god, what's happening? And I mean, he pulled it off, but it was still like it. Yeah, he was like, I'm done. Like I want to take a break, please, because this is just too much.
So that's what we face.
Yeah. But I know for like Funimation, because they'll have like a set, like they licensed out a set number of shows for each season, and then directors, I think you guys put in like your options, like I'd love to do this show, but if I don't get it, this show and then this show, right? Like you put in your top 3. So it like that?
No, we're assigned. We also don't have 16 shows in production like you guys do.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
no, we're assigned, the way it works at Bang, I work mostly for, I'm freelance, so I don't actually work for a company. I'm a contractor, but 99.9% of the work I do is at Bang Zoom because they keep me busy. So I do all my directing there. And I'm assigned the show. There's shows coming in. We don't even necessarily know they're coming.
Oh, wow.
Until the one that I just started, I was told, it was such a big secret, I was told 2-3 weeks before I was going to be show, that the show is even coming to us, because it's fairly well known, and that I was going to direct it. And oh, by the way, here's the key to our Crunchyroll account. You better go watch the 2 seasons that already exist. Yeah, so I have like 2 weeks to watch 2
See you at
seasons.
8 a.m. Oh, no, it's 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's and in terms of and in Bang Zoom we have a casting department. So I can suggest cast, and they'll sometimes ask me about it, but there's a casting director that takes care of all of that for us. So I basically just have to show up, know the product, and direct.
Yeah.
So that makes it, it's a less of a, most of the mix reviews and stuff are done by producers.
Okay.
So in LA, if they're asking you to do that, then you go, really? Okay, that makes me a producer, I want more money. So they generally don't ask you to do that. I am invited, they would like me to come to the mixes. I am invited, they're not requiring me because then they would have to pay me. So.
Yeah. And at Funimation, the directors
You're
will do the
responsible, yeah.
casting.
Yeah, we do the casting and we do the mixing. I mean, we're salaried employees, though we're not contract.
Yeah.
Some of them are though, are contract, like night directors and stuff like that. But yeah.
Yeah,
We do
there's
all
no
of
salary
that.
anyway.
Funny story though, have you guys heard of AD Vision? Do you guys remember ADV? So they got their name, I heard, because it was a misinterpretation by the Japanese that they were talking to because they were a division of another company. And so they heard that as AD Vision. So,
Oh.
that's how they got ADV, yeah,
Wow.
because it was a division of them.
That feels like an anime to me.
Yeah.
New gig.
And they're like, sure, ADV, I like it.
Good.
Okay, so at the auditions, do they like ask you to say like random lines that like you kind of weren't expecting, or like what's the weirdest line that you have to say at like an audition or something?
I don't remember audition.
Don't touch me there! True story. Off screen, of course.
Nothing stands out to me as far as the weird things. Like, yeah, what you'll get is a side, what are called sides, which is basically like a photo, or a drawing, a picture of the character that you're auditioning for, a description, which usually is like telling you some of the characteristics about that character, and like maybe a voice range, kind of like what they think they're looking for, and like an accent, or if they're wanting to hear that type of thing. And then it'll be like a section of lines. Some of them go together, some of them don't. Like they're totally random and different, but with like different descriptions kind of off to the side.
Yeah.
If you're lucky.
If
Like
you're
telling you, yeah. If you're lucky, like telling you like, oh, what's happening in this moment? Like what kind of, is this person really upset or really happy or really angry or whatever, an emotion of some kind. And so they're just trying to get an idea of your range within the voice that you're trying to provide them. To see if you can like go really high, go really low, go for this feeling, that feeling. They're trying to get a sense of what you would sound like as that character overall.
Yeah. Most casting sides are looking to exercise your ability to emote. So they know that you can be angry in a way that works, you can be upset in a way that works, and when you're normal, it's all about emotion.
I mean, if you ever get to do an audition, it's best that you try to touch on all those emotions, because they'll give you a bunch of different lines, so try to give them a good color palette.
And it depends from if you're auditioning from home and then if you're auditioning there.
Yeah.
Funimation is super busy, but they still have time to do like some in-person auditions. And for that, you'll have like a list of girl characters and guy characters, and they'll say choose 3. So I'll try to choose like 2 that I'm like, okay, I know these are in my wheelhouse, that's my archetype, and then one that's like totally out of left field.
Yeah.
But then if it's something from my agent from like a video game or something, it's all emailed to you, and you record at home, and those you can, if you feel confident enough to try out for all the girl characters, you can send an MP3 off. Was there, did you guys have like craziest line you said in that?
I don't remember. No. I don't have a memory of anything.
Maybe in a show, I mean, it was a video game, I was doing Bang Shishigami, and glazed blue the first couple before I started recording. And I had no idea. It was my first day recording, and I was literally directing in another studio. And I walked out in one studio, walked into the, across the hall to the other one. They put it in front of me and I said, well, what are we doing? Okay, it's a video game, you're playing this character, he's this, we're late, go. And we were doing what's called what we call running the page. So we were doing we had a page of just my lines, it was just one take.
Oh, wow.
Write down the page, and then they listen, and then we retake the ones we need to. That's how we go fast. And I'm able to do what I call circular reading. In other words, and when you're good at cold reading, you do this. The words go in your eyes and right out your mouth. It really doesn't pass through the brain much.
Yeah.
And so I'm just going, the last line on the page was, we're going to have a bang spanking good time. What did I just say? I heard it going out of my mouth, and I looked up at the director's laughing, falling off her chair. So that's the weirdest one, and because I didn't know I was saying it until it was actually coming out of my mouth. So.
I remember the first time I ever.
Oh no, I was just gonna say it's the like the Anchorman syndrome.
Yeah.
Like you're just reading and like it'll sound really good usually because you're experienced, but sometimes there'll be a typo and you're still just reading the wrong word.
Yeah.
Yep. I remember the first time I auditioned for Jerry Jewell, it was a character that was like older, and I never read for him before, and she was like super inappropriate. And so this like older director that I never read for, and she like has weird fetishes, and I did not know how to. I'm more conservative as a person generally, so I don't know how to tackle characters that are just like out there, like sexually confident and all that stuff. So I was just like, I don't know how to voice sexy. That was my first time recording from Jerry. Needless to say, I did not get cast in that character.
I just want to, speaking of which, I noticed that from like say the 90s to the present day, there's been a lot of change, especially in how anime is usually was tried to view to a bit younger audience, but nowadays it's kind of like more mainstream stuff. How does that change in like how they want to read lines and how they basically try to generally put it like in the I guess what I'm saying is that I noticed that a long time there's a lot more like censorship and stuff back in the 90s and held back, and nowadays it's a bit more mainstream and like internet, so you're allowed to get away with more stuff. How do you think voice acting has changed from like the 90s to the present day?
I mean, did anybody watch Sailor Moon with the characters where they're like, they're best friends, they just happen to live together? It's like, come on. Thankfully now they're like, no, they are in love. We know this.
Or would they change the character to a girl from a boy?
Well,
Yeah.
Boy, girl.
Well, I was around in the 90s. And the main difference is what everyone's trying to get on broadcast television because that's where the money was, and the money's actually in the aftermarket, but you have to be on broadcast to do that. So they had to tailor things to a commercial audience, to commercial television. That means advertisers. That means censorship, and it's not the government censoring, it's the advertiser won't advertise it because it's controversial, so you make it not controversial. We always had to record what we were called TV-safe dialogue. So the DVD's got one track, the television station got a different one with better stuff. We don't have to do that anymore. First of all, the outlets don't care. They're all cable, so they're much less controlled by the FCC. Also, they're playing it at different hours. Most of what I direct doesn't play till after 1 o'clock in the morning. So we can say whatever we want. Community standards have changed with the FCC as well, but mostly it's because of cable and streaming. Because so the broadcasters have loosened up, and there's really no children's television or animated television on broadcast TV anymore. I mean, there's a little here and there, but by and large it's all cable. So we have a lot more freedom than we used to.
Well, and I'd say too, there's more stuff out there. So I feel like maybe a lot of directors now have so much more reference. Maybe they're pushing themselves in directions that, maybe back in the 90s people weren't even thinking about, because you're just trying to convert this Japanimation into, something that can be on TV. But now it's like, ooh, so this show is kind of an inspiration from this, and maybe we want the tone to be kind of like Evangelion, right? And they'll reference stuff from the 90s. And then maybe, so that could be different maybe now.
Well, back in the 90s, having a transgendered character was absolutely no. I mean, even in Robotech, they took forgot the character's name, who was supposed to be transgendered in Japan, and that was just a costume he wore when he was singing. you know? But now, I just did Fate Apocrypha, where we're dealing with that subject right there. Everybody, the fluidity of sexuality is so explored in that one that we actually had to take out the pronouns from the show. But, so that's changed. The attitudes have changed. It's opened up much more, so it's allowed us to explore things. You used to have to explore that stuff as a perversion or a comedy. And now you can explore it as reality and real relationships and normal people going through things, which you didn't used to do.
I think you were touching on this the other day about how when it first came to the States, like, because it was a cartoon, people were trying to make it for children and therefore censoring it a lot and like changing the translation quite a bit. But
What
nowadays,
translation? They didn't give us translations. Yeah. We literally got a synopsis of what the half hour was about and go. We didn't know what the Japanese said. They didn't give us translations, at
that's
all.
fascinating.
I think, can I just add one more thing to this? Because I think the thing about anime, how it's unique to some of the other stuff, because in like America we have like cartoons that, well, they have some adult humor here and there and can be seen by most people. They're mostly geared toward kids. And then we have like The Simpsons and South Park, which is more like for the after-school dark things. Anime kind of, well, it can go to either way. It's more of this like for teens and stuff and young adults, in that it's one of the few mediums of animated material that's more geared toward like the late teen to young adult genre.
Well, it's the only ones that's being produced, because anime is a lot of things.
I know anime is broad, but
thing.
that's one of the few things you see in America where animation appeals to more like teenagers or young adults.
Look, there's been an attempt. Titan AI was an attempt at shooting at that middle audience, the not adult but not kid. It was I thought a really good attempt, but it fell flat in box office. So there's been a couple of attempts to do that, and I don't know what the secret is. Why does anime accomplish it? Maybe because anime is cheaper and it's done at home, you know. But anime seems to have accomplished it. But American filmmakers and TV people haven't quite been. I've got a TV show I'm pitching to Netflix right now that we're attempting to do that. But we're having to sell it as, well, yes, this is a boys 6 to 11 show, wink, wink. But you read the script; it's really written much older.
Yeah, kind of like Voltron. That's kind of like what I think would be
a little more based in reality than Voltron, what we're doing, but not much.
Yeah, I mean, how many of you, I started watching around that same age where I was like early teens, where I wasn't a kid, but I wasn't an adult, and that's when I really got into anime. I don't know if you guys all around, right? Like around that age? Yeah. Because it was good that it had that like kind of, even thinking of stuff like Agretzko, where it's like, I'd be okay if it was a little kid watching this, but as an adult, I enjoy that a lot. It's hilarious. It's a good in-betweener.
First time I saw cartoon boobs, I was like, I'm in.
Yes, and back.
Well, you were saying that you're trying to figure out how to hit that kind of middle market in a sense, but you're having to pitch it as a show for kids, and you say like 4 to 11 or something?
6 to 11, yeah.
6 to 11? All right, well, even if it's like, because anime is one of those mediums that, you know, for some reason, hit or miss, it kind of does attract that audience. But as of late, there's a lot of cartoons coming out late, you know, this side of the pond that are also doing that and still getting that middle audience.
They're trying, but yeah.
Like, what is Steven Universe or Gravity Falls doing?
That's a great point. Gravity Falls is a little younger, but yeah.
Like, oh yeah, this is a younger audience, but let's be honest, they're pulling people anywhere from 6 to like 20.
Yeah, well, and this is something that I talk about in my animation panel as well, for those of you that were there this morning, and I didn't really say this, but you have to remember like how long Looney Tunes lasted. Mm-hmm. And the reason why it lasted so long is because when they were creating that stuff in the 30s, that was funny to them. They weren't making it for kids. They were making humor that they thought was funny. And that through escalation of our culture, by the time it reached us, it was just for kids. And it was like kids' cartoons. But your parents could watch it with you and everybody had a good time, right? And I think that if you just don't talk down to your audience, which I think is something that LA is really bad about, they tend to think the rest of the world is dumber than them. And so a lot of times content gets created that's not intelligent enough for the audience and they think people just don't get it. But what they're doing is like, as long as you're not talking down to your audience, I think you have a much better chance at actually striking a true chord and resonating with people. But I think that that's probably the one lesson that anime is teaching us right now that's slowly taking hold. I mean, especially you see with the Marvel stuff. Marvel is synonymous with not talking down to their readers, even though it was made for like teenage boys or preteen boys. Avengers had a bunch of really cool relationships in it, and it was about the conflicts between the characters. Or X-Men, it was about inclusivity and feeling like the outsider. Like all those things resonated with my kids. So, I think you just have to tell stories that are smart enough that people want to pay attention.
Yeah, one of the fallacies that Hollywood tends to do is, and I watched this with Power Rangers. Power Rangers came out, was a big hit, and everybody went, oh, it's because it's exploding monsters and latex guys destroying Tokyo. That's what's making it. Even my boss thought that's what it was. But no, it was the story. It was the relationships, it was the characters, it was the fact that we treated girls equally instead of as, have to be saved by a guy. Because of all of that, that's why the show was a big success. And yes, the kids like the explosions and the spandex and the bouncing, but that wasn't the reason. Hollywood's very superficial. So you'll see 9 shows that are all like the same one because they think that it was the subject matter that made the first one successful, more than the way in which that subject matter was dealt with. Yeah. So you're going to see a lot of that. You see less of that in anime for some reason. I think the Japanese tend to be a little bit more artist-centric, maybe.
They're more introspective too.
Yeah.
Like just as a
They respect their artists a little more too than we do. So.
Yeah,
I'll start off.
We'll work our way down.
So like, as like an actor in general, you tend to have to take ownership of the roles that you're playing, especially if you're on a series.
Yeah.
So like, for me, we talk about this all the time, I would watch Fairy Tail all the time, and that destroys me emotionally just because of all the conflict like with the characters and stuff like that. How does that impact you when you're actually playing those roles? Like actually having to like feel and like really kind of relate those emotions like when you're playing those parts? Like how does that impact you while you're doing it?
It just depends on the particular character in the particular show. I mean, it's impactful, but I mean, I try not to like carry it with me throughout the rest of the day if I can, walk it, I try not to. I mean, some of them do stick with you and like linger, and usually those are the ones that I end up talking about at conventions and stuff like this because they stuck with you for some reason, the story, a way that you related to the character. But I mean, all of it is still like just really something that I enjoy doing as an actor. So I like doing it even if it's sad, if that makes sense, even if it's emotional, like that's exciting for me. So there's like a weird
cathartic.
Yeah, like thing happening in my body that like, where like there's dueling emotions. They're like, I really like this, oh God, I'm really upset, like the character, so it's all happening at the same time.
Yeah, well, I feel like too, I mean, I'm sure, totally sure Tony can relate with this, that, a lot of times when you get leads, you're the most boring character in the show because you're just observing what all these other really interesting characters are doing. So when you get to play those more dynamic, conflicted characters, it's almost more exciting because it's like, who really wants to be Luke Skywalker? Like, I'd much rather be Han Solo. He's you know what I mean? Like, it's just, he's a cooler character, and he's got all these problems and demons in his closet and knows all these weird people all over the galaxy. That's pretty cool. I like that guy. So, I mean, I think though that the length that you're in the booth tends to affect more. So like if it's a really heavy character and you've got like 16 hours of recording or 12 hours of recording, that's when it would start to wear on my psyche a little bit, where I would be like, you're just in this sort of dark place for 5 days or something, and it's like day after day I'm just doing that. Maybe a little bit, but for the most part it's all.
I'm a sympathetic crier. I don't know if you guys like, even if I don't feel like crying, but then you hear somebody crying, you're seeing, I'm gone. So when so most of the time when I hear the Seiyu crying, the preview will be short enough that I'm like, okay, I'm gonna voice the crying, but not actually like start to lose it. But then when I like hear myself crying, then it just makes me cry more. And then forget it, when we were recording the last episode of Darlene and the Franks, like that show meant so much to us. Cliff, my director, like he was crying outside of the booth, and the moment I saw him, oh man. Same for Orange. There was because Jerry knew how important that show was to me, he had already recorded a scene between the two leads, which was Micah and Jill Harris. And he's like, they had me turn off the lights because they had already recorded, and he knew how important this was to me, and he played it, and their characters, I mean, the show's about suicide, so it's super intense, and it's the moment where she confronts him because she finds out that he's trying to commit suicide. And so their characters were crying and all that stuff, and I try, you're a professional, this is your workplace. I try to keep it professional, I will be emotional, but then when the read is done, then I was not okay. I was on the floor, like, when you're crying and it's like this was me also at the end of Your Lie in April. Oh, Jesus. Like, you can't cry quietly. It's just like the moaning, like, weeping. So I try not to lose it in the booth. I'll be like, do you have a tissue out there? But there have been times where I have just lost it.
To me, those are the best days. The best days.
Cruel.
When I'm acting, if I can get myself to that place where I'm honest enough and open and vulnerable enough to feel it enough to portray it realistic, it's difficult, it's taxing, but to me it's cathartic. It's like releasing something I've been bottling up my whole life. And to me, that's one of the joys of acting to me, is being able to get to that point where I can really just be in the moment and just experience that fully. As a director, it's the same thing. If I have an actor in the studio who's on the button, they're on it, it's thrilling. To me, it's, first of all, to watch a good actor work, to me, is one of the best things to do, because I love it. I just admire actors so much. But to get that, you're getting that energy from them, because now I'm the director, I'm the audience. So if I'm feeling it from them, oh God, it's just wonderful. And there's not a lot of actors that can get there. I mean, really, truly get there. So I've been fortunate to have a few in the booth in front of me. But at the end of Fake Zero, we were all weeping. As we're recording, we're weeping. At the end of Apocrypha, when the woman who plays Adelante finishes her scene, literally she broke down and sobbed, just like you did, on the floor of the studio, because we get so attached to them. But that's the joy of this. That's the joy of the storytelling, for me at least.
And then when we hear that you guys cry.
Well, then it's,
I've never made it through a screening of Wolf Children. And I've done multiple because it's like a short form in comparison to like the series. And so I've been lucky enough to be able to kind of do multiple screenings. And like every time I'm like, I'm cool. I've seen it like 1,700 times. Like, I'll be okay. Nope. Like into the embarrassing kind of crying. Like,
yeah. Look, there's a moment, I was doing Godspell about 10 years ago. I still do musicals, still go on stage from time to time. And I was doing Godspell playing John the Baptist. And we were in an intimate theater, and it's the moment where he's betraying Jesus with a kiss. And I'm on my knees, I'm looking up into the guy who's playing Jesus, and we're having this moment. He was an extraordinary actor. You're with an actor who's really generous. They just give you energy, and you just take it and send it back, because this was happening. And I started to hear the front row sobbing. The audience was crying, and we were doing this moment. It's better than sex. It's better than any drug. It was I live for those moments. It's just, it really is something. Yeah. You can tell I like my job. We have room for like one or two more questions. That's it. I think.
Or we can do a quick lightning round.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Favorite Miyazaki film?
How's Moving Castle?
Oh.
I relate to Sophie so much. Or, well, close second, Kiki's Delivery Service.
Yeah, I think I'm doing Castle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I kind of like Tony.
Really? I feel like that's a minority.
Yeah, I know. Most people don't like it.
Kiki, yeah. Spirited Away is a good one too. But I think that's mainly just because I was in love with what's his name's.
Oh, yeah.
Haku.
Yeah, that was the character's name, but the actor's name.
Jason Marsden.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were at a con together last week, and I was straight up trying to hide my Kai City emo. I was just like, you were the heartthrob voice of my entire 90s childhood, because he's the voice of Max Goof as well, and Thackeray Binks in Hocus Pocus.
Oh, is he really?
Yes. Yeah, it was a different
Yeah, he's gotta
actor,
get
but
worse.
voice dubbed over all of the talking, like even the live action talking, so it's his voice. Zachary Bates. Oh, well, okay, since we do have just like 2 minutes left, quick lightning round, we'll popcorn around, ask us quick yes or no questions. It'll be whatever first comes to mind. Doesn't have to be the truth, but we're just gonna say answers, and it doesn't have to be voice.
Are you having a good day?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Fluffy.
Favorite Avatar: The Last Airbender character?
Don't know.
Don't have one.
Didn't hear you.
What's his name?
Win.
Fire guy.
Zuko.
Zuko. Thank you. I'm like thinking Korra world because. Okay. Yes.
How many times have you played Harold Hill?
Harold Hill.
Music Man?
I've never.
Really?
Yeah. No.
That's so surprising to me. Like
No,
you
no.
fit
I've
the
done Guys and Dolls, I've done My Fair Lady, but I've never done that show.
you fit the, you know?
I get to play Nathan once.
Oh.
Well, it was intimidating because it was opposite 2 Broadway actors.
Oh.
But when Tony nominated, I haven't been on stage in years. I'm like, I pulled it off.
Has there ever been a character that you've really struggled with?
Yes.
Yes.
More on stage than others, yes.
Well, this one's more for like Tony.
Okay, quick.
If you were invited to go back to Power Rangers, would you?
It depends on the check, honestly. I know that sounds kind of funny and self-serving, but I don't believe in going back. So they would have to pay me a lot of money to go back to it. By the way, they did at one point. When Saban bought it back from Disney, they hired me for about 6 weeks to do rewrites and figure out how to pull Bulk back into the show. So they paid me a ton of money to do that. So it requires them to a large check for me to go back to that show.
I just want to say I appreciate that because that probably wasn't easy given the time limit.
Thank you. No, it wasn't, but it's the job. It's what we do.
I have a question. Pancakes or waffles, guys? Waffles.
Pancakes.
Waffles.
Crepes.
Pancakes.
Pancakes.
Grapes is better. Grapes, yes.
Yeah. Okay, how do you like your eggs? Benedict.
Yeah.
That's how they are.
Poached.
Yeah.
Yeah. Basted or over easy, either way.
Have you ever wanted to voice act a Pokemon?
No.
Dare you? Yes.
Yes.
I would have to go to New York, that's the problem.
Thank you.
I think we're done,
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks,
everybody.
Or a half hour.
Autographs in 30 minutes, and if there's a question that you forgot and then came to mind, you can
Ask
ask us.
Ask away.
Thanks, guys.